A classic chess mini game that is really good for beginners and children to learn how to play is the 8 pawns versus 8 pawns mini game. Let's just bring that up here. And it's called different things. You'll hear it referred to by other names elsewhere, things like pawn battles or pawn wars. Here it's called Capture the Flag in Acorn Chess. And it's all about which pawn can which side can get one of their pawns to the far end first. That's the sort of the idea of capture the flag, who can get to the far end first and claim that flag. So that's the first rule. You win if you can get a pawn to the far end safely. Secondly, you win if you capture all of your opponent's pieces. And finally, you win if your opponent can't move. This is a great mini game because there's only one piece to learn. It's the pawn. Each player has the same number of pawns to start, so it's a very equal battle. And it's good to really focus on pawns. And pawns famously are known as the soul of chess. So they're a very important part of the game of chess. And so having a mini game just focused on them is a really valuable exercise. It's fun because it's simple and easy to learn, but it's also teaching the children a really important part of chess, which is how pawns move and also how they capture. So let's start playing it. We've got the engine off for now, but if I just make a pawn move, we can see I can move it either 1 or 2 squares for its first move. We'll make a move for black. And what we might do actually is just put the engine on, just to make this a bit easier. So I'll carry on making the moves for white, and then the engine will make the moves for black. And again, one thing that's quite useful is, as a teacher or a coach, you can start to maybe show them with Acorn Chess, for example, how this mini game works, play for a few moves so the children understand it, and then they can play themselves either on physical boards or on Acorn Chess itself. So let's make another move for white. Move this pawn forwards 2 squares. And now there we go. The engine has moved the pawn forwards 1 square here. And we'll carry on making moves. And this is a good game because one thing I'll just illustrate is if I move this pawn forwards 2, we've reached an interesting situation where, in fact, this pawn on c4 that I just moved can no longer move forwards. It's stuck. And the same for this pawn on c5. These pawns cannot move forwards anymore, and they can't capture moving forwards. This isn't the next thing I wanted to explain. Well, how do pawns capture? In every other chess piece, the way that the piece moves is also the way that the piece captures. The only exception to that is the pawn. So pawns move forwards 1 step at a time, or 2 at the beginning. But when there's something blocking their path, they are not able to move forwards and capture it. In fact, the only way that pawns can capture is diagonally. So if I try and capture this pawn here, it doesn't let me. It's a message here, the pawn cannot move to that square. But interestingly here, the last move from the engine was this pawn to e5. Now, pawns do capture diagonally. So in this case, I could either move forwards 1 square or, and I'll do it, I will actually capture that, and that's a diagonal capture. So that's the only way pawns can capture. But you can see that in this mini game, it's quite easy for the position to get quite blocked up as pawns reach a position where they can no longer mutually blocked. They can't move forwards in either case. So this is an interesting idea that children will have to understand and get used to as they play. Again, we've got another blockage here. So the position can start to get quite blocked up. So we'll keep making a few moves. Okay, so now the engine has moved here. I'll actually take this one, and this actually gives me a free path to the far end. So a nice clean way to win the game. So now if I move forwards to the end, there we go. Game over, white wins. What you'll notice is that having got to the far end, the pawn stays as a pawn. That's a very important concept in this mini game, that we exclude more complicated rules like promotion. So in a regular game of chess, if you get a pawn to the far end, it can be promoted. That's something that doesn't need to be explained this early on for children learning chess. They can learn that rule later. This mini game is just fun for helping them understand how pawns move, how they capture, and so on. And if you get it to the far end like we did here, it just stays a pawn. So that's nice and simple. The other rule, which is in normal standard rules of chess, is en passant. It's another type of way of capturing in certain circumstances for the pawns. Again, this mini game does not include that and does not support that deliberately. Again, to keep it simple, and again, these are rules that can be learned later. They're not necessary for learning and playing this initial mini game. Final thing I want to say on this mini game is it's not just good for beginners and children learning the rules of chess. It's also really valuable for more experienced chess players and children who've played before can still have a really good battle against each other. It's also great to have them helping to teach maybe the children who are learning how the pieces move. It's a nice simple game both to teach and to play. And just one final comment, if I reset the position, again, the pawns, they start on the actual starting squares for a real game of chess. So you always have 8 pawns on the second rank at the start of any game of chess. Obviously, you have other pieces on the first rank normally. Here you don't. But this, again, is teaching the same structure that they'll get used to as they start to play real chess later on. So that's the Capture the Flag minigame. Definitely valuable to help children learn chess in a fun way and learn about how the pawns move. If you want to download Acorn Chess, you can do so for free at acornchess.com. And if you're interested in more videos like this, then please subscribe to the channel and there'll be more videos coming soon. Thanks very much.